Hello there, so in this video I will go through the 5 A minor pentatonic positions, but more so than that I'll show you ways to practice them that make them sound musical straight away and get you actually remembering the shapes better. So probably one of the bigger breakthroughs you'll make in your early stages of playing, or even if you've been playing for a long time but you don't feel you've progressed as far as you want to, is learning how you can play scales in lots of different positions on the neck. But it's important you realise here, we're talking about the A minor pentatonic scale, which only actually has 5 notes in it: A, C, D, E and G. And those same 5 notes occur all over the neck in different formations. So that's all you're ever using here. And I always find when I teach this to people, like in person, that makes a bit more sense to people than just thinking of these patterns that you have to learn, okay? We do want to learn all those patterns if you want to get more dexterous and more competent as a player, but it's important you realise it's just the same notes all over the neck. So we'll get stuck into the pattern straight away, then I'll show you how to practice them, and then I'll show you how to practice them in a way to make them sound musical as well. So here is position 1. So you've got the tab on screen there and me playing it. I'm not going to bore you with saying do this, do this, do this. You know, I'd rather you just look at the tab and get that going. But what I will say is I would encourage you to use your little finger, okay, for those stretches across like that, where you have to go 5/8. Now a lot of people don't. I mean, some of my favourite guitar players don't necessarily do it that way, but I would encourage you to be able to use all your fingers. Later on you can change fingers for certain positions on this, but for now I would encourage you to use your little finger there. Okay, so it goes 5/8, then 5/7, again, and then 5/8 again, and use that little finger. Now on the tab that I've given you picking directions, okay? I would encourage you to try and follow them. On to position 2. So I'm going to start this one with middle and little finger and then go from there, okay? So in this case, I am using my little finger, but you know, a lot of the time for those higher ones, I might shift my first and third finger over to do that bit. I would encourage you to learn it both ways, but definitely get this little finger going. On to position 3. So this is one where when I teach it, usually students will change it as quick as they can to get rid of using that little finger there. They might start it with finger 1 and 3. That's totally fine. Loads of people do it that way. If you want to do it that way, that's cool. Just the thing about this third position is you'll always have to do an awkward shift at times, whichever finger arrangement you choose. But again, I always like to say practice this both ways. Position 4 then. And we've got all the way to position 5. So if you're an acoustic player, by the way, you'll probably be able to get just about position 4 there, okay? don't worry if you can't go past this part of the guitar in your acoustic, just do the positions you can. And it's getting a bit tight up there, so I might be entitled to just get rid of the fourth finger there. So to remember all these different formations, although hopefully you know this first one okay, I'll just give you a tip that I find helps people over the years build muscle memory with the scale patterns they're learning. So take 2 strings at a time and loop over and over again a little scale sequence just involving 2 strings of the shape. So if I take the low E and the A string here, I'm just going to play those 4 notes, but ascend and descend and loop it over and over again, like so. And with a lot of things like this, you're probably not always consciously thinking, but you're really improving your different picking techniques with this, with the various picking sequences that you're going to encounter with this. So it has a good knock-on effect for your whole playing. So take 2 strings, loop it over and over. And then what can we do? Add the next string. So we'll add string 4 now. Next one, so I'll add the G string. I'll add the B string. And then the final string. Okay, now what you'll notice through the tab and the patterns I'm showing you is I always make the end note an A again to kind of resolve it for your ears and develop some good bit of ear training. So you'll notice after we come back down the scale pattern, that's an A there, but I've put the end on this A here on fret 7 of the D string. Which gives it a nice Jimi Hendrixy sound as well. But little things like that will just help imprint the sound of this A minor pentatonic scale in your ear a bit more. So I would recommend to pay attention to that end note as well. So another great thing to help you get more comfortable with learning the scale and for it to sound like music, I don't want this to appear like an exercise because we want music to be fun. Although some of us like the technical aspect and getting that really good, it's not everyone's cup of tea. So what I'll show you here is I'm going to put just an A minor blues backing track on. It's on the channel, by the way, you can just look it up. And get a backing track, a relevant backing track, so in this case something in A minor. Get that playing in the background and then practice your scale pattern over the top of it. And I guarantee it'll start sounding like music. So there we go, there's some handy ways to practice the scale patterns as you're learning them. Now what I'll show you now as well is I always like to associate one of the pentatonic patterns with another to help cement the shapes a bit more and the subtle differences between the shapes. So I always think of the phrase a 2-for-1 deal. You're learning one pattern but you're trying to think, oh, it's very like that pattern but just that little difference. And that helps you learn the patterns a bit better, but then it helps you shift between the patterns when you want to do some lead stuff. So I'll give you an example. We're going to take pattern 1 and pattern 4, which look very similar. Pattern 4 starts here at fret 12. So they look similar, they start with the big stretch. They don't shift out of the box. Some of the other ones do, but those two don't. So what I recommend is go up and down one pattern, then try and shift to the other, go up and down it, and go back and forth. So you're learning one pattern and another and the subtle differences between them and how to shift across the neck. Take your time, look where you're going. Go and go back again. And what you could do as well, practice these scales backwards if you want. And then go up the next one from the bottom. And then maybe here, try and go back down to this one backwards. Practice them in different ways. Bring in subtle changes here and there just to help you learn a bit more. So let's go to pattern 2. So sometimes one of the difficulties of learning all these patterns is where does one end and where does one start? So it's kind of simple once you see it. Your first position there, you've got 5/8 on the low E string. So 8 will be the start of pattern 2. So your new formation starts there. And then you'll notice every first note on the string after that is like the last note you played in the previous pattern. So you're on to pattern 2 with 8/10. Now you finished over here in pattern 1 with 5/7. So 7 is where you start in pattern 2 for that string. Okay, if that didn't make sense, go back and listen to what I just said again. But it will start making sense once you start going through these. So your next pattern starts where your last one ended. So speaking of pattern 2, I always like to associate it with pattern 5. Okay, you can also associate it with pattern 3, but I'll come back to that. So let's have a look. This is pattern 2. Pattern 5 starts with the same formation. So you're going from fret 8 up to fret 15. So it starts with the same formation, but it goes on to the next string with the same formation. Then you've got 2 big stretches, and then 2 little ones again. So that's another thing to think about, the distance or the interval between the notes. So I think of this as the little pattern, and this is the big pattern. And then 2 little ones. So 2 little ones, 2 big ones, 2 little ones. I hope that makes sense to you. So all I'm doing is associating the shapes of pattern 2 and 5 to learn them a bit better, but then learning the subtle difference between them. And then pattern 3 is like stuck in the middle of them all. Maybe the most awkward one. I suppose it depends on your perspective really. Depending on how you want to do this, you can start with those fingers or those. That's not too hard to remember. So for pattern 3, it's got 3 of the little ones to start the pattern with, okay? Which is kind of similar to 5, and a little bit similar to 2. Then you've got a big stretch. But on guitar, a lot of the time this B string makes things awkward at times. You have to shift over at that point to fret 10. Okay, so think of number 3 as in the middle of the lot of them, okay? Pattern 1 and 4, associate those. Pattern 2 and 5, associate those. Pattern 3 is like a little bit in the middle of the jigsaw there. Now what I want to do is finish with 3 other positions, just to use the whole range of the guitar. So where we finished on pattern 5 at fret 17 of the E string, guess what happens? You go back to pattern 1 again, but in what's called a higher octave. It's going to be all the same notes as pattern 1 down there, but it's just going to sound higher in pitch for your ear. So you acoustic guys probably won't be able to get that, but just so you know it exists. And here you might want to use the 3rd finger. You know, it gets a bit tight up there. So that's pattern 1 again, just in what's called a higher octave. So what we can do, especially if you're an acoustic player, is make use of the lower range, because we can do a few patterns there. So pattern 5 in a higher octave was at fret 15 of the E string. So we can do the same pattern at fret 3. So we can also use this open position for pattern 4, believe it or not. It's the same as pattern 4 up here, but just in a lower octave now. A little bit awkward to visualize, but it's good to know this one, especially if you're playing on acoustic. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. So take your time with that and do check out some relevant backing tracks, and there's some on my channel, okay? There's some bluesy backing tracks in A minor, and you'll be able to have those in the background while you practice those things.